Hey, what's up, fam? It's Gamer Guide 7 Aces here. And alright, in this video, this is actually something I've been wanting to make for a very long time, since last month. It's almost June, but since April. As you guys know, April marked the first year anniversary of the Sonic IDW Comics, and I wanted to make this video comparing my opinions, what I think about IDW versus the Archie Comics. Now, the IDW Comics, I just started reading them the beginning of this year in January. Of course, because that's when I was starting on making Sonic Rebound. Now, if you guys know, as you guys already know, Sonic Rebound is based on the IDW Comics. It's going to be an animation adaptation, or animated adaptation series. I came up with this idea in the fall of last year. So far, I've read all of them except that TSR, Team Sonic Racing one-shot. I'll get to that later, but I've read all the arcs. There have been, right now they're currently on season 2 of Sonic IDW Comics, and so far they're currently on their 5th arc. The first arc was the Fallout arc. That's the arc I'm currently adapting right now in Sonic Rebound. And the second arc was the Fate of Dr Eggman. Third arc was the Battle for Angel Island. The fourth arc is the Infection arc, and the fifth arc, which I am really loving because it just has a lot of horror thematic elements in it, like The Walking Dead, is the Crisis City arc. That's what we're currently on, and they're going to have issue 17 next month. They're going to introduce Cream the rabbit, her mother Vanilla, and Emerald, I think. So yeah, so what do I think of it? My favorite arc thus far is definitely the Battle for Angel Island. I love that arc. It's everything Force's wishes it was. The first arc was definitely the slowest for me, Fallout. It was basically exposition. And so I'm definitely going to make that a lot more interesting and more straightforward in my adaptation of Sonic Rebound. There's a lot of filler, in my opinion. Not a lot, but there's a couple of filler in the Fallout arc. Because at the time, when it first came out in April, they were releasing weekly. So, they were just trying to appeal to the masses. So there was a couple of fillers. So I cut a lot of that extra stuff in the series. Then after they introduced Tangle the Lemur, things really start picking up by the second arc, the Fate of Dr Eggman. I'm not going to spoil anything about it here, but I really enjoyed that arc. That arc was really good. I liked the twist they did. Kind of wish they kept it a little bit longer, but I totally understood. They couldn't go on that long, without making Eggman the villain again. And then Battle for Angel Island was just awesome. I liked the whole Metal Sonic, Metal Overlord. I loved Metal Sonic arc, period. I really liked it. I think it was the best it's ever been, and it was definitely my favorite arc. It was just like a war movie type of arc. Just everything was about war, so I really liked it. Then the Infection arc was really good. It was more laid back because it was the beginning of season 2, so it was reintroducing a new story. We got a new character, Dr. Starline. He's definitely one of my favorite characters in the comics besides Whisper, and I just really like Dr. Starline, And the Infection arc was pretty good. It was a bit slow paced, but I knew it was building up to a huge crescendo, and the payoff is Crisis City. Like, this has to be, so far I am really loving this arc, and I can't wait to see how season 2 unfolds. So that is my opinions of Sonic IDW Comics. Very strong beginning. They start off on a very high note, and it's just been continuing from there. Like, I really hope these comics end up being canon with the Sonic games and the Sonic franchise, because Sega has more of a hand with these comics than they did with the Archie comics. Like, the Ian Flynn and the writers can't do everything. They can't write everything in these comics. Some things are off the table, some things are on the table. We still haven't seen Super Sonic yet. The Babylonian Rose have only had a cameo. So if Sega has a hand in what goes in and what goes out in these comics, I feel like these things are really going to be canon. I would love this to be canon, because it's about time, So the IDW comics have already broken a lot of records. The first arc, the first issue, broke several records. The first few comics were the highest selling Sonic comics since the Sonic Universe comics or whatever. Like, it was one issue in the Archie comics, and I think it was during the whole Mega Man and Sonic crossover. So basically, the IDW comics, like, in total, overall, have sold way more, have broken more records than the Archie comics ever have, besides the Sonic and the Mega Man crossover comics. So that's crazy. That's insane that the only comics that are above the Sonic IDW comics are the crossover he did with Mega Man in the Archie Comics. So the IDW comics are huge. They're definitely resonating with a lot of people, and the Latinos too. I'm friends with the Alexis Chavez. I hope that's how you pronounce her name. He's actually in charge of dubbing Sonic Rebound in Spanish, and he tells me how big the IDW comics are in like the Spanish community. You know, with Spain, Mexico. I think he's from Venezuela or Colombia, Brazil, etc. So they're getting really big over there. He actually told me that they never really got that much into the Archie comics because the Archie comics never really sold in those parts. But the IDW comics just have a farther outreach because they're really good. I really love them. And to be honest, I was glad when the Archie comics ended. I think it was back in 2017 because I really felt like they fell off. The Archie comics fell off decades ago. You know, they reached their peak in the 90s in the classic era. Ever since Sonic went 3D, the 2000s is when they just started to dip in quality. Especially in the 2010s, they got really fanfiction-y, and I'm going to explain in this video. And I hope the IDW comics never jump the shark like the Archie comics did and go that route. Now, the Archie comics, they peaked with SatAM. You know, the whole Sonic SatAM phase in the early 90s, the Freedom Fighters, Knothole Village. I mean, that is when the Archie comics were in their golden years, because let's be honest, the whole Resistance storyline and Sonic Forces in the IDW comics is heavily inspired by the Freedom Fighters in the Archie comics. You know, I mean, come on, it completely parallels that. And I know what I'm talking about because I actually read some of the Archie comics. I've owned like 2 of them. The first one was a graphic novel called Sonic the Hedgehog Robotnik's Revenge, or Dr. Robotnik's Revenge. I'm going to show the picture right here. That was a very serious story. I remember that one. I think that was the one where the robots put a no fun allowed sign or something like that. Then the other one was a more comical, whimsical story. It was a Sonic Shoes Blues or something, where Sonic couldn't find his shoes, so it affected his speed, like he couldn't run that fast because the friction hurt his feet. But that's obviously not canon because that made a lot of people believe that Sonic is only fast with his shoes. But yeah, so I really grew fond of the Freedom Fighters. I really liked that Rotor guy, you know, the Walrus. I liked Bunny Rabbit. I thought she was pretty cool back then, and she had like sassy appeal. And you know, obviously Princess Sally and Antoine and all that stuff. I knew about the Freedom Fighters. They were in SatAM. That's why a lot of people love SatAM. I talked with the people behind the fan project Sonic SatAM Season 3, and you know, I told them I grew up with the show. You know, I used to watch that all the time with the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. So I got my dose of the comical Looney Tunes vibe of Sonic and the more serious SatAM. But yeah, so the comics were running incongruent with the SatAM and the games, and I just loved it. They peaked, you know. And also I loved how the classic games were adapted in the comics and told in the comics. It really just expanded on the lore of Sonic. Whether it was canon or not, it felt canon to me at the time. So like I said, the writing was good, and it inspired the IDW comics. And but over the years they dropped the ball, especially when Sonic went 3D and then they started implementing humans. They tried to make sense of it in Archie Comics by having it like Sonic and his friends went through another dimension, the human world and all that. And even up to this day, Iizuka has the whole, there's the human world and there's the anthropomorphic world, which is confusing as hell. Sega Scourge actually explained that in his video. But yeah, so that's when they started dropping the ball. Especially when they tried to connect it with the games. It just, you know, they weren't doing their own thing anymore. And it just got to a point where they just started putting all kinds of characters, specific Archie characters. You had the old characters like Mighty, the Armadillo, Ray, the Flying Squirrel. You had the modern characters. Just a mismatch of everything. It felt like your fan fiction, you know? Speaking of fan fiction, this is when Ken Penders came in, and that's when the comics started becoming more of a soap opera. You know, Sonic sleeping with other characters, characters having sexual relationships. Like, I remember this comic where Tails was very angry with Sonic and wanted to fight Sonic because Sonic, he said Sonic hooked up with his, with the girl he was interested in. I think, like, she was another Fox character. I think she was Fiona. And it was like, what the hell? This isn't even about Sonic lore anymore. This is about characters sleeping with other characters. It just got really cringy, got really fanfiction-y, and legit, I truly believe this is what started the whole furry movement with the Sonic fan base. This is what started the whole furry community with the Sonic franchise. because a lot of furries love the Archie comics, and they really love this whole, like, that whole phase with the Sonic, because that's when I tapped out, because the Sonic Archie comics had become something I did not like, and the furries loved the hell out of it. So I did not like that. And I know I used to say the Fleetway comics were weird because Sonic was very much an asshole in those, in the Fleetway comics, which were in the UK, and Super Sonic was like the stuff of nightmares. But this guy, at least it was more grounded and serious than what the Archie comics. Like, it wasn't about characters sleeping with each other and all that soap opera melodramatic bullshit, you know. So yeah, and like I said, I hope the IDW comics never get to that level. I mean, I'm not saying Amy shouldn't like Sonic and all that stuff, or there shouldn't be any love interest. I mean, there's always been, like, it's always been that way in the Sonic series. I mean, just don't make it all sexual and like I'm watching some evening soap opera, because then that's when it just gets really weird and awkward and just cringy. Every comic series has to know when to end. Right now, the IDW comics is just full of life, full of creativity. But when it gets to the point years from now, years later, when they're just running out of ideas, just end the comics. Just end it. End the series. If you want to reboot, fine. But don't just continue prolonging it. And then it jumps the shark. And then it ends when people are no longer interested in it. Because I would hate that. If the IDW comics gets all weird and twisted like Ken Penders, I will legit just stop adapting them. I won't adapt those particular arcs because I'm not going to do that on my channel. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. IDW comics are overall better to me than the Archie comics. The Archie comics peaked in the 90s with the Freedom Fighters and then they fell off. IDW comics are on a great note. I love the Resistance, although I do kind of feel like the Freedom Fighters were more innovative than the Resistance. I mean, because the Resistance is not, I mean, especially the Resistance kind of disbands at the end of season 1. So the IDW comics is not just about the Resistance. But yeah, I really love the IDW comics and I hope it continues with the high quality they're delivering right now. What do you guys think about this? Let me know down in the comments below. Do you prefer the Archie comics? Do you prefer the IDW comics? Let me know. What do you think about Ian Flynn's writing versus Ken Penders? Just let me know down in the comments and just go ham. Let me know. Be respectful. Respect my opinions and each other's opinion. Alright guys, smash the like button, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Take care, and until next time, swag out.